Now, welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll that asked, what are your early thoughts of the High Republic era? I'll then be breaking those results down a bit before then reading and responding to some of your comments, and I'll also be showing off some of the artwork that's been sent in to me lately. Alright, so let's right away get to the results of the poll, where we'll see that 6% of people said so far so good when it comes to the High Republic era, 9% said it's just too early to tell or it's been okay so far, 5% haven't been a fan, and then 39% said they haven't checked it out but might eventually, and 40% said they haven't checked it out and don't intend to. And so when we break that down a little bit, it looks like 20% of people who voted have read some or all of it, and of those people, 30% say it was good, 45% say it's either okay or just too early to tell, and 25% haven't enjoyed it so far. And then when it comes to those who haven't checked it out at all, roughly half of them say they might eventually look at it, and then the other half say they're not interested. Okay, what should we take away, if anything, from these numbers? Well, the most glaring statistic might be that 40% of people have zero interest in this whatsoever, but it's hard to know if they have no interest in it because of what it is or if because they're not willing to buy and read the books. The only way to begin to figure that out would be to ask the same people, do you usually read Star Wars books and comics in the first place? And are you choosing to pass on these? And if so, why? The other stat that's kind of interesting to point out here is that a quarter of the people who have read it haven't liked it so far, at least according to this poll. And yes, you can bring up biased results and say how I haven't been the biggest supporter of all things Disney Star Wars. But I'm guessing if you bought and read the book, you were probably open to the idea of enjoying it, but you didn't. Though yes, there's also the chance that those who haven't read it have voted that it hasn't been good based on either reviews they've heard or whatever else it might be. Either way here, pretty interesting results, but as usual, a lot of the story will be told in the comments. So let's get to them now, but not before I quickly say thank you to everyone who votes, comments, watches the videos, as well as to all of you who send in your artwork or whatever else it might be. And if you'd like to do that, to send something my way, you can email me at the address in the description below. Alright, so let's begin this, as we always do, with the top-rated comment, which this time came to us from Tired Droid, who said, I keep forgetting the High Republic even exists. And well, that's a problem, isn't it? But I have to say, I do find it kind of odd for them, for Lucasfilm, to go all in on such a large-scale publication effort that takes place not only in a new time period altogether, but in one no one's ever really asked for, I think. No one's been dying to know what the Jedi were like or up to 200 years before the prequels, back when I think we assume it was a time of relative peace in the galaxy, and the Sith were still very much hiding deep in the shadows, biding their time. Not to mention, it's all happening in books and comics, or at least it was until we were told that an upcoming show, The Acolyte, will be taking place in the final days of the High Republic era, and one of the other highest rated comments, which came to us from AKA Clockwork, said he just doesn't have the time or money to invest in this, and there were plenty of other comments that said something very, very similar to that. And so making such a huge commitment to just books and comics seems, again, kind of odd, and I think this time period has quite the uphill battle ahead of it. I mean, do you think the Old Republic becomes as popular as it ended up becoming if it had just been a publication effort, if it hadn't been kicked off by a video game and one of the greatest Star Wars games ever, I think? In my opinion, no, it absolutely doesn't. In fact, I'd wager most fans love the Old Republic time period entirely because of that game or games, the Knights of the Old Republic games. And most of them never got into any of the other stuff. They never cared much about reading the books and comics that went with it. That then kind of brings us to this comment from Master M, who said, hard pass on High Republic, been diving into the EU books such as the Thrawn and Bane trilogies. Also, there's this one from R. Thomas, who said, let's just say I've been revisiting Old Republic era content, going over lore, reading novels, and playing Star Wars The Old Republic for the first time, and I'm infinitely more interested in that than the canon High Republic. And again here, there were plenty of comments just like these two. People who said they'd rather reread the old expanded universe stuff or were just getting into the books for the first time and are reading the older stuff instead of the new. And sadly, especially if you don't care so much about official canon and just want a good Star Wars story to read, I do think you're better off reading the older stuff. For the most part, it's just better and stuff actually happens in those stories. Because, as I've explained before in other videos, one of the big differences between Legends or the old expanded universe and the new canon stuff is the old EU books is where everything used to happen. They used to be the story and the whole story. whereas with the new canon, not much of significance usually happens. It gets saved for shows or movies, and it's usually more along the lines of supplementary material. Which is then one of the reasons why I think they are doing or starting this whole new time period that is otherwise a blank slate. The old EU never really covered this time period. They want their authors to feel like they're free to have stuff happen, and stuff does happen right away in the first book, Light of the Jedi. But I think the catch-22 here is that, though it sounds great to have a completely blank slate to work with, at the same time you don't have that big, interesting thing to kick it off. Again, like the Old Republic had a game, or the original Expanded Universe had, well, the original trilogy as its foundation, and people wanted to read about and find out what happened next to those characters. Alright, and moving on now, we have this comment from Ahsoka Skywalker, who said, "So far, not really promising. When introducing everyone as gifted Force users, it starts to feel fake forced." Then there's also this one from Benoit Poir, who said, "When everyone is special, no one is." And yeah, this does feel like one of the problems with the High Republic so far. Every Jedi sort of gets introduced as amazing and the best ever at something, or the youngest Jedi to ever be knighted, and things like that. But part of me does wonder and hope that there is a very good story reason for this, that the Jedi started to believe their own headlines, if you will, and begun to believe they are the greatest, which is what sort of leads to their fall eventually, as we'll see in the prequels. Only time will tell, I suppose. Alright, and moving on then, we have this comment from Majoris Arbach, who said, "Literally everything so far has ranged from decent to great. The people hating on this series, which the poll results will likely show, have not taken the time to read it. People are calling it woke without explaining why." Then there's also this one from Noah L, who said, "I think a lot of people aren't being open-minded on this era. The amount of hate I saw for the trailer was overwhelming, but nobody could articulate why they didn't like it. I thought the sequel trilogy was bad, but I am willing to give any Star Wars content the benefit of the doubt until I see a reason otherwise, because I like it so much." And I mean, in my opinion, the first novel, Light of the Jedi, was pretty good, or a pretty interesting story in its own right. It's a well-written book by Charles Soule. My personal biggest issue with it, however, is how the whole time period just kicks off, which is with a giant hyperspace accident, and I made a whole video about why I'm not a fan of that. And also, it very much feels like it's trying to set up a whole time period rather than just focusing on the one story at hand. Anyway, here, I do think plenty of people or fans are still willing to give this time period a chance. You may look at the poll results and say, wow, 40% of people want no part of that, they're being unfair. But again, we have to ask, how many people don't read the books and comics anyway? Would I get similar results for any new Star Wars book coming out, even if it might be something like a Return to the Expanded Universe, for example? And sure, honestly here, some of the hate is likely coming from those who are never going to read it in the first place, so take of that what you will. However, and to just throw out a guess here, I think why some are turned off by the High Republic era and the way it was originally presented, why they call it woke but won't articulate or can't articulate why, is because it just almost feels like it's being presented as, hey, this is finally the Star Wars for absolutely everyone and everybody, that they're going to embrace diversity on a whole new level, and that every group of people you could ever imagine is going to have their very own Jedi to look up to, even though, no, it doesn't really feel that way when you read it. But again, the way it's presented makes it feel like, almost like old Star Wars has a problem that this is now fixing, and I think a lot of people honestly don't really appreciate that. Alright, and kind of going along with all this, we have this comment here from Jose Sanchez, who said, "Considering one of the authors told us not to buy the books, I'ma take a hard pass." Also, there's this one from Derp Lasario, who said, "They told us not to buy it, so I'm not going to buy it, especially since they're blaming Luke for its failure." And though I don't really want to go too deeply into this topic, it's probably better suited for one of my Sunday commentary style videos. But it's a strange world we live in where businesses are attacking their consumers, or should I say where employees are attacking customers and see no repercussions from the businesses that hired them or employ them. It seems like we went from the idea that the customer is always right to one where the customer needs to be educated, and if they refuse to be educated, they should be canceled, and we don't want them as customers. And though I don't mean to sound sympathetic towards big business at all, but to me, I have a hard time knowing if they're complicit or just afraid. I mean, imagine the bad press Lucasfilm gets if they reprimand or fire someone who goes out there and attacks toxic fans on Twitter or defends someone they see as being attacked. Imagine if Lucasfilm or Star Wars put out a statement defending those who have been deemed the worst of the worst because, they didn't, for one reason or another, enjoy a trilogy of films that had a lead female character like they were supposed to. Just imagine the backlash they'd face for that. But again here, I think this is a better topic for another time, and so let's now get to just a few final comments here before wrapping it up. Starting with this one from Paul Thompson, who asked any recommendations for what I should read from the High Republic, and my recommendation would be to absolutely start with Light of the Jedi if you are going to get into this or give it a try. Then we have this comment from Jingle Joe, who said, I'm listening to the first novel after finally having listened to the Darth Bane trilogy and the new Thrawn books. It's not bad at all, but Jedi vs. Sith is what Star Wars is to me, so the lack of Sith is just making it kind of boring. Next up here we have this comment from Earth to Sam, who said, almost done with Light of the Jedi, and it's pretty good so far. More of an introductory story, so nothing crazy significant happens, but the High Republic era has a lot of potential. We also have this one from Dub Deluxe, who said, I thought Charles Soule's book was a pretty solid start, 7 of 10. Looking forward to seeing what Claudia Gray's book is like out in a few days, and it actually comes out today, and I'll be starting to read that as soon as I'm done with this video. Next up here we have a comment from Chief Autopilot, who said, the old comics succeeded so well because they were released in a time where that was the only thing coming out. Today Star Wars is fresh with plenty of movies and TV shows in the past 10 years, so there's just not a vacuum for these books or comic sales. From what I understand, they're just not that interesting compared to other stories, so unless they start some kind of ebook streaming service, I don't see the High Republic selling as well or reaching the heights of other stories. Also here we have a comment from Lupo95, who said, I used to suck in all Star Wars related content no matter what it was, but currently I have no intention at all to ever get into the High Republic era. I mean, maybe they are alright, but until this point the marketing of them didn't really catch me. We also have this comment from Snow White Witch, who simply says, I just don't want to give any more money to Disney. Then this one from Strike Flyer Aquamos, who said, I'm all for exploring the canon version of what happened before Episode 1, but the idea of the Republic only starting to colonize the Outer Rim only 200 years before Episode 1 sounds kinda dumb. Not to mention the whole hyperspace catastrophe causing harm to planets. Hyperspace should always remain just a thing to get point A to point B, so I doubt I'll ever get into it fully, except for the Drungr, who are those Lovecraftian horrors. These look kind of interesting. Also, we have a comment from Tizzy Dog, who said, I've only checked out the first comic and it was mediocre in my opinion, but I heard Light of the Jedi is good, so I will read that. And finally here we have this comment from Liam Carden, who said, here's the problem. Why would I read this when I could read Legends books or other canon books? And yeah, after reading through the comments, I think one of the bigger challenges this time period faces is just setting itself apart and standing out and being something people really want to read. I think a lot of fans were really hoping for a rebirth of the Old Republic, or should I say bringing it into the new canon, not exploring a whole new time period that doesn't even include Jedi versus Sith, which is what for many Star Wars is all about. And though it's still too early to tell, and it could turn out to be fantastic, it can't be denied that there are many, many other great Star Wars books and or stories out there for it to compete with. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about the High Republic era thus far, or what I or anyone else had to say about it here in this video. Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.